I told somebody the other day, called my radio show, and he said, talk me, Leland, out of giving up. And my response was, if I have to talk you out of giving up, you've already done it. It's got to be in you. But here's the thing. It's one heart and one mind at a time. Because it took us 40 years to get to this place. We're not going to turn it around in a year. We're not going to turn it around in one election cycle. It's going to take a long time to get those bums out of there. As far as I'm concerned, all of them from both parties can go. Right. But it's going to take a while to get those bums out of there. These Tea Parties give us courage to tell people we would never tell before what we think is right. And it gives us courage to tell people we are to stand up in situations for ourselves that we would never have stood up before. Every time you stand up, there's some colloquium or diversity group or some group that wants to tell you that that's not politically correct. My friends, I don't care anymore about political correctness. I care about my liberties and your liberties, and it's time for us to stand up. These Tea Parties give us the courage to do that. Secondly, what they do. David Williams, who led the way, he's a Republican, on 3 tax increases. And don't let the Republicans lie to you and tell you that the gas tax was just a freeze. It was a hike. Constitutionally, they were supposed to give us that money back. Who wants a nickel a gallon right now? And one legislator actually told me this. He said, it's just a nickel a gallon. Well, I'd rather my nickel go to somebody at the drive-thru at McDonald's than to a legislator that's going to give it out in welfare. That's my nickel. Give it back to me. I'd rather my nickel go to a small business owner and let them pay or give their workers a raise. I'd rather somebody in the private market get my nickel. So give me my nickel back. So that's the point. This whole thing, David Williams led the way. Republicans led the way. Now the Republicans, guess what? They're mad at David Williams. Do you know why? Because all of you guys are giving all the senators grief back in their home district.
That's right.
They can't stand the heat. They fear us.
Right.
These Tea Parties did that. Why do you think the first thing out of the governor's mouth the last time he came on my radio show was, no, we're not going to raise taxes. We don't believe Kentuckians are in the mood. What, we were in the mood last time? Well, we're not in the mood now, right? So we're done. So the Tea Parties are working, folks. Every time we gather, it's not just another protest. And you go in here and you go, well, what do we do really? We heard some guy get up there and show us his white legs and, okay, whatever. No, everybody here gets courage and gets determination and realizes they're not alone. And every time we gather, somebody says something and somebody else hears it. And that's important. So that's the first thing. I asked myself a question, now somebody else got to ask me one. Don't be quiet now. Yes.
Montana, their governor signed in the Montana Freedom of Firearms Act and basically declared to our government that we're not going to take this stuff. Tennessee's doing it. Texas is doing it. Where's Kentucky at? Why can't we get this passed? I heard it came up in February and didn't even make it to the floor. Why are our representatives in Frankfurt basically not even going this route? They won't even listen to this stuff that we want to tell them.
It didn't pass. Good question. The question was the Montana's law about gun rights and basically telling the government where they can put their legislation on weaponry and on ammunition. It didn't happen for the same reason the state sovereignty bill didn't happen last time. How many of you guys know there was a state sovereignty bill in the last general session? You know what happened? We didn't show up. We didn't show up. There were no rallies. There were no Tea Parties. At the time, it was before all of this happened, and nobody expressed any care, so the legislator said, But when we show up, those things get passed. We've already got 2 different sovereignty bills pre-filed, because these guys are scrambling to do what we want them to. And that's a bill I think Kentucky ought to be right in lockstep with Montana and Texas, because every time we shirk some authority of the federal government, we're reestablishing our authority. I'm telling you folks, this battle lies in our home states, in our home communities, in our own cities. We promote these people, these laws. This is where this battle lies. And here's a question I get from that. I asked Jim Bunning, our senator, and I love him. I mean, he's voted with us. He came right out on my show and called this all communism that we're facing. But I asked him, what do you think of the Tea Parties? He said, I've seen your little Tea Party things. They're great, but nobody's going to listen. Well, if you're not going to stand up for us, like I said before, then we'll stand up for ourselves. But why aren't you leading? We're hiring you as candidates and as office holders to lead and to do what we ask you to do. Why are these guys not coming up with new ideas? And that's one we've got to take to them. And every time you pick up the phone, it really works. It really works. A lot of people say, I just call my legislator. It works. We turned the immigration bill around, the amnesty bill around. You know how many calls Mitch McConnell had? And he was trying to negotiate for that. 50,000 calls against it. We can turn this stuff around. Something else. Yes?
Besides kywesurroundthem.com, what can we do locally to really get involved?
I talked to somebody yesterday. Yeah, I'd like to see a bunch of people run for education board. This is something that's very local. Somebody said, how do we save this? You know, a lot of what the problems that we're facing in this country, this is my opinion, happened when we started getting a lot of liberals into our school systems in the 60s. We took prayer out of school. We now teach more gender studies than we do balancing your checkbook. And where you can have the most influence is right there on your local school board. I'd like to see some people step up and run for school board and do it. And I'm going to tell you, I've run for political office before. I have no interest in doing it now. But I ran for city commission in Nicholasville. I lost by 50 votes. I knocked on 1,500 doors. And let me tell you something, even if you lose, getting out there and doing that is an emboldening and empowering thing, to step up and say, I got an idea. And it does affect people. It really does. You never know how much you affect people until a month or 2 months later, and then you find out something you said really rung with them. And somebody else picked up the platform I ran for and ran with it, and they won, and that was great. So I think that one of the things you can do as far as getting involved in the local level that's tangible is you get out there and you run for the school board. And when you come to groups like this, there's always things to sign up for. You know, we've got the Campaign for Liberty over here. They've got a good candidate that's running for U.S. Senate. So, you know, you can sign up for these groups and help these people out. So, what else we got? You guys aren't very talkative today. Encourage me. I want to know I'm not alone here. I got to go back into work on Monday. Yes?
The cap and trade tax.
Yes.
They tried to push through Memorial Day week, before Memorial Day weekend. Where is that?
Cap and trade. Right now, they're actually struggling with that in Washington, and they're not sure it's going to pass because Democrats are getting so much flack from you daggone Tea Partiers. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to tell you about a conversation I had with one of our congressmen, Congressman Jeff Davis from the 4th District of Kentucky. And if you don't mind me elaborating on this a little bit, it goes a while back. He and all 6 of our congressmen here in Kentucky voted for the AIG bonus tax, where they were going to tax them 90%, contractually obligated bonus. No matter how you feel about AIG, these were contractually obligated bonuses. This was the beginning of the erosion of private property rights.